Welcome to the Daily Ride, and today I'm going to talk about something that's top of mind for most cyclists, which is safety. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can keep yourself safe, but I think one of the most contentious issues is high-vis clothing. I'm not convinced by it. I don't think it's always effective, and this is why. The kind of common group thinking with high-vis clothing is it must be effective because, let's face it, the police, all the kind of accident and breakdown services, they wear them, ambulance people, all these kind of people wear high-vis clothing. So we think, okay, it must be safe. But there's plenty of evidence to the contrary that it might only make very little difference, but it might also be more dangerous. I want to start off with a study by a professor at an English university in Bath called Dr. Walker. He did a study in 2014, and what he was looking for was to see how much space people gave when they passed him on his bicycle in different kinds of clothing. He used a variety of different kinds of jackets, some which were just dark blue, normal kind of cycling jackets, and then he also wore the high-vis jackets. One even had the police logo on the back, one had polite, and then he collated the data. He had sensors on the side of him so he could see exactly what kind of distance he was being given. The overall results, I think there was something like 6,000 or 7,000 passes, whether he was given just over a metre of difference. I think it was 1 metre 17.5 centimetres or close to it. Now, what he did find was, regardless of what jackets he wore, with one exception which I'll come on to, is that it made absolutely no difference. He was given this standard amount of space. The only exception was where he wore a police jacket and he got an extra 5 centimetres. So what this would lead you to assume is, if you do wear a high-vis jacket, you might be seen, but you're going to get no more space when someone passes you, which is very interesting. The same professor, he also did a close pass test with helmets, which gave very different results. And helmets, that's something I want to come on to as well, and I'll probably do that maybe in the next video or the one after, but that also led to some quite surprising results. So going back to the high-vis test, what this tells us is that if you do wear high-vis clothing, don't expect to get any more room, because you're not. Now, this was done in 2014 in the UK. Laws in the UK have changed since this was done. Now, in the last 2-3 years, the new laws mean you have to give cyclists 1.5 metres, and I think they're doing that because I was cycling back in the UK last year and I did notice a perception shift in my own mind that people were giving a little bit more room, which is a good thing. So now, if these same people in the 2014 study were passing at 1.175 centimetres, then they'd be breaking the law, and it just wouldn't be enough. The study also showed that 1 to 2% of all vehicles were only giving 50 centimetres of room. That's something like that. I mean, that's insane. That's just not enough. That really is not enough. That's not been my experience, actually, in the UK or anywhere else I've been cycling. I would say you do get close passes, but 1 in 100, that's shocking, quite honestly. I would say, for me, yeah, it's maybe, whoa, I don't know, 1 in 1,000 or something like that. Anyway, that's one of the first studies. I'm going to move on to another couple just to give you a flavour. There are a lot more of these, and what I'll do is I'll link this webpage here, and that gives you a list of other kind of studies that support what I'm saying. Going to move to Italy, and then to Nottingham. I'm only going to look at another couple of studies, and as I said before, if you want to check out all the other ones, just go to the link in the description below. But very quickly, the next study is one in Italy where recently they repealed, they made wearing Hi-Vis clothing mandatory for cyclists at dawn and dusk and in the nighttime hours, and they found it made no difference whatsoever. Why that's the case, they don't know, but it's kind of another piece of evidence, if you like, that maybe Hi-Vis clothing doesn't make that much difference. The final study is one that was carried out in Nottingham, and it was carried out by Nottingham University Hospital, and it's perhaps one of the more involved studies, because what they did is anyone admitted to hospital having a cycling accident, they looked at the kind of clothing they were wearing. Not only did they do that, they took in-depth interviews with a cyclist, and they went back to the place where they actually had the accident, and they looked at the behaviour of other cyclists. They interviewed them extensively, saw what kind of clothing they were wearing, and then started to correlate results of how effective Hi-Vis clothing was in preventing accidents. And surprisingly, it showed that there was a significant correlation between wearing Hi-Vis clothing and having more accidents, which is completely what you wouldn't expect. It wasn't a big study. I think off the top of my head it involved about 50 to 100 people, but it's still an interesting one. That is the final one. I'm going to look on the pro side, if you like. And now, looking on the other side of things, I think one of the biggest studies was carried out in Denmark. Now, this study did show that there was a reduction of over 40% of people that were wearing Hi-Vis jackets. So, effective, therefore, that's a tick in the box, thinking, okay, you should wear Hi-Vis clothing. And since it had, I think, in the region of, like Professor Walker study, about 7,000 participants, then yes, it is significant. Yeah, so the studies, they're there. There's some for, some against, but there's a lot less on the pro side than you would think, and there's a lot less research into how effective Hi-Vis clothing really is. And I think another thing you need to bear in mind is that a lot of Hi-Vis clothing, or the kind of yellow clothing, has reflective material on it. And I don't argue about reflective material, because I think reflective material, I think it really works. I think there's a very, very good argument for reflective material, because when I know myself, I drive a car, and when I'm driving around and I see reflective material, my God, I can see it from miles away, especially in the dark. So I think in the dark, reflective material is fantastic. It really, really does work. So if you have Hi-Vis clothing, and that also has reflective material, then you have to ask, well, is it the fact that you're wearing a big bright yellow jacket that's helping you keep safe, or is it the reflective material on it? And I don't know, and I don't think the research has been done in that area, and I think it should be, because all we're doing now is basing our protocols to keep ourselves safe on, not quite hearsay, but on what we think is solid evidence, and there just doesn't seem to be any. Maybe it's intuitive, brighter clothes, you can be seen. There is something in that as well, and I do think at night time, if you wear something white rather than dark, you can be better seen. But of a night time, if you're relying on bright clothes to get you seen, I think you're heading for a hospital. You really, really do need good light. That's the imperative. I think reflective material as well is great, and I do have some bits and pieces when I'm riding in the dark that are reflective on my bike and on my person. And if you are riding at night as well, I think having reflective material on your legs, and so people see the motion of your legs, is a good idea, and that can be carried over into the daytime, because there have been studies where they've shown if you have Hi-Vis leg warmers, people can see the motion of your legs, and that can have an effect on keeping you safe. How well that study's been proved or not, I'm not really sure, but that's kind of a little bit off at a tangent. Reflective material, yes, good. Hi-Vis, and I really don't know, I'm not convinced, and these are some of the reasons why. The first thing I think about Hi-Vis clothing is it gives the wearer an unfounded feeling of safety. To think wearing Hi-Vis clothing gives you some kind of superpower protection, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. You're still vulnerable. And wearing a helmet as well, it doesn't make you any safer. And I honestly believe that people that wear all this Hi-Vis stuff, they wear the helmet, they do everything right, and I'm not knocking that, but you cannot ride in any different manner to when you're not wearing this gear. It doesn't matter if you're wearing all the protective gear, if you're wearing none at all, you have to ride very carefully, and you have to ride very, I'm trying to think of the word, but not aggressively. I see this word a lot where people say, oh, he's taking an assertive line, and I've seen a lot of these videos on close passes, and I think that looks aggressive to me. It's not assertive. You have to be a lot more unassertive, struggling for the word again, to keep yourself safe. Don't think that wearing this Hi-Vis clothing is going to give you a superpower. It really won't. And I think people that wear it get this false idea that now, oh, okay, I'll be safe, and they get themselves into some poor riding positions, and I think that can cause accidents. And that's maybe why when we go back to the study at Nottingham University, that they found people wearing Hi-Vis clothing had more accidents, or were more likely to. And that kind of comes onto riding skills, and that's one of the things that I think people need to improve on. I think there should be more courses. Maybe bike shops should get involved in providing adult courses for people coming back into cycling, because it's okay if you drive a car and then you go into cycling, but if you've had very little experience of cycling, it's a different world. I'm a car driver, motorbike rider, and a cyclist. And those three skills are all very separate skills. You can't expect to go from a car to a bike when you've only ridden your bike as a kid around the park and have those kind of skills. So I think it'd be a good idea if there was more adult training. Now, I can remember as a kid, back in the 60s, yes, I'm that old, and we had a thing called the Tufty Club in the UK. And the police used to come around to the schools, and I thought it was a great idea, or I do now. And you used to have to do this proficiency test before you were allowed to go on the road. And you used to get this little badge called the Tufty badge, and you were in the Tufty Club. But they came round, and it was like a half day. So it wasn't just a small thing, and they were very patient, and they were great. And I would love to see something like that, the police taking a more proactive kind of approach to cyclists and trying to help them, and maybe bike shops, cycling clubs getting involved to give people a better idea of the kind of riding positions they should be taking in what situations. So basically, when they do start to back into commuting or just leisure cycling, they have a much better idea of how to keep themselves safe. Okay, so that's one thing. I think riding skills could be a lot better, and I think there's this kind of perceived level of safety. And the other thing is that I think also motorists, when they see someone in Hi-Vis, they also think that the road user is a lot less vulnerable than they are. And if they're wearing Hi-Vis clothing, the rider will also have a helmet on, which kind of again confuses the issue, because a lot of these stats are taken with people with Hi-Vis clothing, but they'll also have a helmet on. And you think, well, does the helmet and wearing a helmet have some kind of what's the word, some kind of impact on people having accidents or not. That's something I will come into in another video. But when the driver sees this person, they're looking like they're dressed to go to war or something like that, they can perceive that they are actually a lot less vulnerable than they are, which might mean they make close passes as well. And the final point is, there was a poll taken amongst drivers about their perception of people that wore high-vis clothing, helmets, etc. And this was in the UK, and the majority of drivers said that they saw these people as less than human, which is absolutely appalling. I mean, it's a terrible attitude, and it makes me embarrassed as a driver to think that drivers would think of someone less than human because they've got a high-vis jacket, a helmet. They're just trying to protect themselves and keep themselves safe. Unfortunately, I have kind of witnessed this attitude to cyclists myself, and more embarrassingly, it's only been in the UK. Last year I did the Land's End to John O'Groats ride with my friend Ian, and we both experienced some hostility of just normally riding on the roads. We weren't wearing high-vis gear that I can remember, but it does show that there is some hostility, certainly in the UK, it seemed to be more so than anywhere, towards cyclists, and maybe high-vis kind of exacerbates that and makes you more likely to have an accident because you just get less regard from drivers. Again, I don't know. This is all guessing. So let's wrap up. High-vis clothes, I'm just not convinced. I'm really not. I'd like to see more evidence, and I think more research needs to be done into this area, and we just shouldn't accept that it's a fact. It might not be, it might be. If you want to wear high-vis clothes, go for it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying that you should be aware that there might be other factors involved in keeping you safe, and high-vis maybe not the panacea that you actually think it is. I think the most effective way to keep yourself safe is to practice defensive riding. That's the word I was struggling for earlier. Always ride defensively, ride sensibly, don't run red lights, obey the traffic rules. That will keep you safer than anything. The second thing, I think, are lights. At night time, if you don't have one strong rear and front light, you're insane. You really are. You need them. At night, I would say you need 2 rear lights with different flashing patterns. Daytime running lights, I think, are a great idea as well. I don't actually have them, but it is on my mind, and it's something that I am considering putting on my bike, and I think they're a very good idea. And I'm also a fan of reflective strips, and if possible, to put them on a moving part of your body, like your cars. There are a few sensible ways to keep you safe. If you think high-vis will work, then yeah, okay, go for it. If you obey and carry out all the other things, then yeah, you're probably going to be safe. But whatever you do, remember that the number of cyclists who actually have an accident, or sadly we lose them completely, they're few and far between. You're far more likely to die on your sofa, stuffing yourself with potato chips and pizza. That's all for today. That's all for the daily ride. Please ride safe. Take care.